Hello all and welcome to sunny Wymondham in Norfolk. It's a lovely Friday afternoon and Gemma and I have been out in the garden drinking beer and listening to Harvest by Neil Young. Couldn't get better than that really, can you? Even during lockdown. Today we're having a little look at Melody Maker from April the 15th, 1972. And on the cover is a very hairy man called Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. I can never really there's not many bands I can't understand, but Grateful Dead are one of them. Pre-punk I was into all sorts of rock music and the like, but Grateful Dead I just never got where they were coming from. I guess you had to be completely stoned and in the audience, but nah, never got Grateful Dead at all. Anyway, Dead were storming Britain. They were coming to Britain to play at London's Empire Pool. Also on the cover, we've got announcements of new singles by T-Rex and the Rolling Stones. And the T-Rex single is, let's have a look. Deborah, which was Tyrannosaurus Rex. Went up the charts to number 19 this week, but of course that was a bit of a cash in because T-Rex were now the biggest thing in British pop, and the single they're talking about here was Telegram Sam, which is possibly their finest moment in my eyes. There's that little run of singles, isn't there? Hot Love, Get It On, Telegram Sam, Jeepster, Metal Guru. 5 singles, Jesus. I suppose if you include Ride a White Swan and Deborah in there as well, which predated those, doesn't get much better than that, does it? And the Stones single, the first Rolling Stones single in a year since their last hit, Brown Sugar, is released on their own label tomorrow, and it's Tumbling Dice. Does seem weird, doesn't it, looking at this? Here we are 48 years later and we're talking about records which have now gone down in history and become completely legendary, being new releases. Their last hit, Brown Sugar. Anyway, let's have a look over the page. The charts, as per usual, on page 3. And the singles, Without You by Nielsen, number 1, which is one of those records, I guess, that is... has suffered by familiarity enormously. It's a great song, but I don't care if I never hear it again, to be quite honest with you. Number 2, Amazing Grace by the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards Band. Number 3, Beg, Steal or Borrow by the New Seekers. Number 4, Alone Again Naturally by Gilbert O'Sullivan, who we spoke about in a recent Mark Talks Mags. And I was extolling his virtues, saying just what a genius he actually was. Number 5, Hold Your Head Up by Argent. Of course, these hard rock singles would infiltrate the charts on a regular basis in those days. Meet Me on the Corner by Lindisfarne at number 9. Fabulous stuff. Let's see what the highest new entry is. Highest new entry, all the way down at number 27, is Rad Answer by Marmalade. Some nice stuff in there. And as they said on the front cover, Deborah by T-Rex up to number 19. Just below that, Run 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 by Jojo Gunn, one of the greats. And in the album charts, number 1 is Harvest by Neil Young, which Gemma and I have literally just been listening to. We wanted a bit of peace and quiet in the garden, so we thought let's go for a bit of acoustic Neil. And you don't get much better than Harvest. A beautiful album. Number 2's Fog on the Time by Lindisfarne. Number 3, Paul Simon. Number 4, Gilbert O'Sullivan himself. And number 5, Nielsen Smielsen. Number 6, Thick as a Brick by My Guilty Pleasure, Jethro Tull. Right, let's move on. Lennon double album. And the single from it, Woman is Nigger to the World. Very controversial at the time indeed. On number 3, page 3 rather. What have we got here? Blood, Sweat and Tears are looking for a new singer. festival site there. After many hang-ups, including objections from local residents, Great Western Festivals have now fixed the site for their Great Western Express event, which takes place over the bank holiday weekend. Sixth, Stackridge. Stackridge, of course, for my Clevedon friends, as we said before, were basically a Yatton band. They weren't all from Yatton, but they were from the locale throughout Somerset, but Yatton is where it's always said they were from, probably because of the instrumental B-side to one of their singles, Purple Spaceship Over Yatton. Anyway, this is Stackridge have added a sixth member to the group. He is Jim Walters, who takes over on bass guitar from James Warren. Well, Jim Walters actually was known as Crun, as far as I remember, C-R-U-N, Crun Walters. He wrote some of their best songs. I think he wrote Dora the Female Explorer and Slark, two of the absolute classics. And James Warren, of course, was their main singer. James Warren and Mutter Slater sang all of their songs. So James Warren, I think, moved on to guitar from there. They go back on the road for a short concert tour, which includes another Bristol at the Pigsty Hill Light Orchestra. They played at Western Winter Gardens, Bath University. I'm sure my brother would have probably gone and seen them on that tour. In fact, I seem to recall a concert programme lurking around our house with Stackridge and the Pigsty Hill Light Orchestra, so I'm sure he did. I'll have to ask him that. Ginger Baker has formed a new group called Salt. Has he indeed? It's a new one on me. What else? Well, Wishbone Ash. Title of the new Wishbone Ash album will be Argus, which in my pre-punk rock days was actually one of my favourite albums. Track on it called The King Will Come, which is absolutely fabulous song. Cheech and Chong, comedy duo, arrive in Britain on April the 24th. I don't know how many of you will have heard. People of my age will know Cheech and Chong, of course, but younger people probably won't. They were controversial because most of their comedy was based around smoking pot. And it's a bit of a one-trick pony, really, their comedy, but it was bloody funny. They made a film. This was 1972. They made a film in about, I guess it probably would have been 76, 77, called Up in Smoke, which is well worth seeing. As I say, one-trick ponies, but that trick is very, very funny. Camden Festival 72 at the Roundhouse. This was over a week period, and you had Wishbone Ash, Family, Fairport Convention, Rory Gallagher, Donovan, Brinsley Schwartz, Dr. John, Cheech and Chong. We've got a half-page ad here for Nana Muscuri, the Greek songbird. I always used to remember her being called. If we're going to use a 60s/70s term, she was as square as they came, with thick-rimmed glasses. A bit like me. Let's look on. America, James Taylor, a review of a gig there in Los Angeles. Oh, this is a little piece here in The Raver, the little comedy satire page they always did, about the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, and I guess this is because Amazing Grace was #2 in the charts. So they're taking a piss out of that a little bit, unsurprisingly, I guess. The Man Who Discovered America. Ha! Jeff Dexter. Jeff Dexter started out as a very, very, very young mod face in obviously the early to mid 60s, and then was an important figure throughout the 60s and into the 70s, throughout the British counterculture. Probably without making lots of money, and he's still about. I've seen him turn up on Facebook from time to time. But if we're looking at figures that are were famous for being famous, if you like. Jeff Dexter was one of them. And there's quite a big article on him here, which would be quite an interesting one to read, which I will go back and do after I finish this. Honour the Dead, the Grateful Dead. We've spoken about them, and I don't really think I want to talk any more about them. Jazz scene. You know my thoughts on jazz by now, so we'll pass over that. And the 4-page ad for Rocket Man by Elton John. New pop singles. Unsurprisingly, the first one reviewed is Tumbling Dice by the Rolling Stones. Sweet. This is Chris Welsh, who of course was Melody Maker's main journalist at the time. Sweet memories. It is impossible to see their name on a label and not undergo inner convulsions in which joy, mirth, tears, nostalgia and deep emotion are inevitably interwoven. High praise. Good single though, isn't it? Not the biggest Stones fan, I must admit, but great single. Oh, and number 2 on the singles here, or the second one reviewed, Todd Rundgren, I Saw the Light. One of the great songs, I'd say, of all time by anybody. Brilliant. Certainly Todd Rundgren's most famous song. I guess Todd was probably the dawn of power pop. He was power popping it before power pop became a term. Yeah, great song. Let's look through the others. You got Edwin Starr, Funky Music, Show Enough Turns Me On. Not a lot more here that were actually hit singles. No, a little bit disappointing this week. But what a 2 to start with, Tumbling Dice and I Saw the Light. An ad for Jackson Browne's current single, Doctor My Eyes, which again is probably his most famous song, just like Todd's was I Saw the Light. Jackson Browne, Doctor My Eyes, currently at number 16 in the American singles charts. Very famous song. Elephant's Memory. Full-page piece here about John and Yoko Lennon's new band, talking in New York to Lorraine Alterman. And the first line of the review is, "Woman is the nigger of the world," wails John Lennon in a record plant, a recording studio on Manhattan's West Side. Yoko, Phil Spector, Jerry Rubin and a half a dozen friends, acquaintances and technicians watch from the control room as John, wearing headphones, gets down a vocal track for his forthcoming record. Yes, they didn't do much more than that, did they, Elephant's Memory? Caught in the Act, 2's live this week, Mott the Hoople. Now, it's quite interesting really, because this is April 1972. It's not long at all before Bowie gave them All the Young Dudes. And so this must have been right at the point where they were talking about splitting up. Right at that point. They were at their best when Ian Hunter was cracking his whip behind the band in roaring album favourites like Sweet Angeline, The Moon Upstairs and Rock and Roll Queen. What a great band, and it would have been such a shame if they had split up, wouldn't it? A full-page ad for Phantasmagoria by Curved Air. Now there's a story I could tell you about that album. It involves me, my brother, my good childhood friend Rich Beale, who went on to do the artwork for the first couple of pop group albums and fronted probably one of the most, in my eyes, one of the most underrated 80s bands, Head, and a pile of Victor comics. But it's not something I really go into here. I'm not proud of it. But anyway, Rich Bill made me cry. We were 12 years old, and he made me cry over Phantasmagoria and a pile of Victor comics. But there you go. If you want to know about it, ask me another time. But there we are. Albums. BB King, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Argent, all together now. Not a lot going on in the albums. Here's a football song of can't remember. Thought I knew them all from that period. Now available on RCA. New single, Manchester City FC, Boys in Blue. I don't think that one troubled the charts. It was quite a thing for First Division or Premier Division now football teams to release singles in those days. And I guess the most famous one of this particular period, and the one that they all wanted to follow, was Blue is the Colour by Chelsea. So Manchester City have gone Boys in Blue. Jazz scene, no thank you. Don't worry about Jim, that's Jim Capaldi. The Jones Boy. This is Jack Jones, who was the American easy listening crooner. Laurie Henshaw meets the singer currently on a sellout British tour, and I seem to recall, I could be wrong, it could have been 1972, it could have been a little bit later, but Tina Charles, who went on to be a bit of a British disco queen for a very short period of time, she was due to tour with Jack Jones at one point and got thrown off the tour for some reason. Anyway, that's another story, and it may have been another story, it may not have been. Oh, it's interesting. Deutsch Rock. Bear in mind this is 1972. So I guess the term Krautrock had probably not been termed. And we've got a piece here. Germany's new music is possibly more interesting than any in Europe. Michael Watts reports from Cologne. And that's probably true. And the three bands that it focuses on here, we've got the headline, Deutsche Rock, in a very gothic script. And the three bands mentioned are Kraftwerk, Lucifer's Friend and Amon Jewel. Now, Lucifer's Friend are nodders that haven't gone down in history like the other two there have, but Kraftwerk, of course, we all know about. Amon Jewel were one of my favourites of the scene. Other bands mentioned here I can notice here are Embryo. And again, this would be a Can, of course, I mentioned. This would be a very interesting article to go more into, and I guess really this is where this all falls down a bit, where I don't look through these beforehand, because it'll be interesting just to dig into there and highlight a few little things that they say. But it does say here, I've just picked up here, Kraftwerk, brackets, Power Station, close brackets, I understand have released 2 albums. One of them, Organisation, on RCA, the other simply bearing the band's name on Philips, whose English office say they've never heard of them. The band revolves around Ralph Hutter on organ and Florian Schneider-Elseben on flute, violin and electric percussion. Though some of the Philips album reflects the trivial use of sound, there are truly strange moments, like their heavily phased drumming on Rockzook, which fades in and out of the speakers with the cold precision of a machine. In fact, they've got the most, inverted commas, mechanical, close inverted commas, energised sound I've ever heard in places. Their name couldn't be more apt. And I guess that sums up Kraftwerk, doesn't it? And particularly in 1972, where they were still finding their sound. So that's nice to see. I see other bands mentioned here, Tangerine Dream, Guru Guru, Popol Vuh, Cluster, Sweet Smoke. I got a Sweet Smoke album. I would hardly put them in the same sort of thing. Sweet Smoke were more of a sort of guitar-based band. Asherah Temple. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. I will definitely come back to that one and have a little read. What we got here in next week's M&M. And here's a full-page ad for the Bikash Festival. Friday, Dr. John, Hawkwind, Dion, McKendry Spring, Linda Lewis and Sam Apple Pie. Saturday, Donovan, Family, incredible string band Cheech and Chong, Jay Giles Band, Pacific Gas and Electric. And Sunday, Grateful Dead, New Rise of the Purple Sage, Country Joe and Brinsley Schwartz, plus others. Moody Blues. Quintessence. Oh, lovely big ad here for the Great Western Express Festival, which we spoke about earlier in the news pages. Oh, blimey. What a lineup that is over 2 days. Oh no, over 4 days, I beg your pardon. Joe Cocker, Lindisfarne, The Faces, Straubs, Humble Pie, Slade, Stone the Crows, Genesis, Nazareth, Focus, Billy Joel, hidden away at the bottom of the bill, The Beach Boys, Groundhogs, Don McLean, Rory Gallagher, Shanna Na, one of the great live bands, John Baldry, etc., etc. Jesus. And you could go for the whole weekend. Tickets for Friday to Monday for £5. That'd be a good weekend. The festival, they could not stop. The Blues. Blind Date is, as we've said many times, the thing where they get a celebrity, musical or otherwise, to review album tracks. And it's William Rushton, better known to us as Willy Rushton, a well-known TV wit of the period. Well, say TV, literary and TV wit of the period. Could be a pain in the arse as well. But he's reviewed Jane Birkin and Serge Gainsbourg, La Decadence. It won't sell, he says. And he was right. Lucifer, I want to... you. Well, I'm guessing that's I want to fuck you, but I don't know. What a very short record. Oh, they keep stopping. I'm going to flop you? What was that word? I'm beginning to run out of 4-letter words beginning with F. The lyrics are tremendous. The message immediate and direct. I think it's splendid. No doubt it has been translated from the original. Is he actually saying fuck you? The BBC will never play it, but it's quite a good noise. I don't even know that. I'm going to have to look it up. And he reviews Manchester City Boys in Blue. Oh, it's the footballers. Oh, Jesus. Or as in Manchester City today, oh, Jesus. Private Eye has got to do one with Bert O'Reilly screaming and clutching himself in the penalty area. Jazz again. Jim Capaldi again. Guitars. This is the Musos section. Jazz. How many jazz scenes are in this episode? Jesus Christ. And here's our obligatory couple of pages of loons, leather jackets, budgie jackets, sunglasses, Jovan boots as per usual, colour posters, 50p each, all measure 30 by 20, Bolan, Hendrix, Best, Cassidy, T-Rex, Stuart Bolan, Zeppelin and Lindisfarne. And more of them, Lima boots, more loons, fabulous fitting cotton velvet jackets. Oh, and Vinegar Joe, Elkie Brooks, of course, before she hit the big time. Roy Hollingworth talks to Elkie Brooks, singer with Vinegar Joe. And who was the other Vinegar Joe singer? I forgot his name. Robert. Addicted to Love is him anyway. Robert Palmer, that's who I'm thinking of. Any questions? What equipment is used by T-Rex? Several guitars, including a Gibson Les Paul Original 1948, Gibson Flying Arrow, Fender Stratocaster and Telecaster, Heyman, Epiphone and a special 6-string electric with engraved alloy front and a preamp handmade by Tony Zamatis. I wonder what happened to all them. Some money's worth. In Search of the Dubliners. Hard drinking Dubliners. Discorama. And we've got the folk page and the club calendar. Let's pluck some names out as per usual. Electric Light Orchestra, with Alex Harvey supporting them in tiny letters. Vinegar Joe, Mick Abrams Band. Mick Abrams was the original guitarist in Jethro Tull. Arthur Brown's Kingdom Come, Sandy Denny. Daddy Longlegs, that's not the current Daddy Longlegs. Mott the Hoople. Mott the Hoople again, Man, East of Eden, Wishbone Ash, etc, etc. More caught in the act, we've got Curved Air. Dubliners, Jack Jones, Chris Montez. More jazz, it's everywhere. And that's ads, and we go on to the last page, which is Mailbag, as per usual. Lovely picture of Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson in action. Let's pluck one out here. I was very perturbed to hear that BBC Radio's Jazz Club is banning avant-garde music. For anyone living in the provinces, there is now no means of hearing music of this kind unless one tunes into foreign radio stations or is fortunate enough to live near a record shop which stocks avant-garde jazz records. I hope I never hear an avant-garde jazz record again in my life. I'm writing on behalf of many silent T-Rexians. When Jill Burton wrote that Mark had fought it out with God and won, she was as good as saying that he was better than God. I was disgusted. Mark and co. are a real jive, but no man, no matter how great, is comparable to God. That's Heather Hull from Cosby in Leicestershire. Oh, and the Jethro Tull picture is because someone's complaining about the price of concert programmes. And they're saying that 20p is too much. At that point, we'll leave it. So, from April 15th, 1972, we'll leave it at that. Goodbye.